So, could a Neanderthal learn to use a smartphone? It's a strange question. It feels like a joke at first. You picture a cartoon caveman with a club in one hand and an iPhone in the other. But if you think about it seriously, it gets interesting. It's not just about Neanderthals. It's about us. It's about what makes a mind modern. What are the base ingredients you need to navigate the world we've built? To make this a fair question, we have to set some ground rules. We're not talking about plucking a 30-year-old Neanderthal hunter from the Ice Age with a time machine and dropping him in Times Square. That person would be terrified. The shock would be overwhelming. The language barrier, the cultural barrier, the sheer sensory overload, it would be impossible. Let's imagine a different scenario. Let's say scientists, through some future magic, raise a Neanderthal child from birth. This child grows up in a modern human family. They go to a human school, they eat human food. They are surrounded by human language and technology from day one. In this case, the question isn't about culture. It's about the machine itself. Is the Neanderthal brain, the biological hardware, capable of learning the software of our world? Could this child, this person, learn to use a smartphone? The short answer is probably yes. But the long answer is where it gets fascinating. They could use it, but maybe not in the way you and I do. The experience would be different. The level of understanding would be different. To see why, we need to look at the Neanderthal mind and then look at the smartphone itself. First, let's get rid of stereotype. Neanderthals were not stupid. That's an old, lazy idea. They were incredibly successful. They survived for hundreds of thousands of years in a harsh, unforgiving Europe. You don't do that by being an idiot. Their brains were big. On average, they were actually slightly larger than our own brains today. But size isn't everything. The shape was different. Their skulls were longer and lower, where ours are more round and tall. This suggests their brains were organized differently. Maybe they had larger visual processing centers in the back, an adaptation for spotting prey in the dim European forests. Maybe our brains have larger frontal lobes, the part right behind the forehead that deals with planning, social networking, and abstract thought. The organization matters more than the size. We know they were intelligent in a practical, concrete way. Their toolkit, the Mousterian, was sophisticated. They could take a rock and know exactly how to strike it to get a sharp flake. This takes planning, good hand-eye coordination, and the ability to think in 3 dimensions. They were apex predators. They hunted massive animals like mammoths and woolly rhinos. That required cooperation, communication, and a deep understanding of animal behavior. They weren't just running at things with spears. They were planning, ambushing, and working as a team. They also had a culture. They controlled fire. They built simple shelters. They made clothing from animal hides. There's strong evidence they cared for their sick and elderly. Skeletons of Neanderthals have been found with healed injuries that would have been crippling. A broken leg or a withered arm would be a death sentence if you were alone. But these individuals survived for years. That means someone was feeding them, protecting them, and caring for them. That shows compassion. It shows a complex social bond. So we have a picture of a species that is intelligent, social, and highly adapted to its environment. They are not grunting brutes. They are a different kind of human. Now let's look at the smartphone. What skills do you actually need to use one? We can break it down into a few layers. The first layer is purely physical. Can their body even use the device? Let's start with the hands. Neanderthal hands were different from ours. They were wider and more robust, with shorter fingers and a thumb that was less flexible. Their grip was incredibly strong, a power grip for holding spears and tools. Our hands are more adapted for a precision grip for delicate manipulation. Could a Neanderthal hand work a touchscreen? Probably. It might be a little clumsy. Imagine someone with very large, thick fingers trying to type on a small phone. They'd make mistakes, they'd hit the wrong keys, but they could do it. Swiping, tapping, and pinching are not incredibly complex motor skills. A Neanderthal child raised today would develop the necessary muscle memory. Their hands might not be perfectly suited for it, but it wouldn't be a deal breaker. They could hold it, they could tap the icons. What about their eyes? Their eye sockets were larger than ours. Some scientists think this means they had bigger eyes, adapted for seeing in the lower light of Ice Age Europe. Better night vision, perhaps. This wouldn't be a problem for looking at a bright screen. If anything, they might just need to turn the brightness down, so physically they seem to clear the first hurdle. Awkward maybe, but possible. The next layer is the most basic level of mental understanding. It's cause and effect. If I do this, that happens. I tap the screen, a light turns on. I swipe my finger, the picture changes. This is a fundamental form of learning. We see it all over the animal kingdom. A rat learns to press a lever to get a food pellet. A dog learns that barking at the door makes a human open it. Neanderthals were masters of cause and effect. Hitting a rock in a certain way causes a sharp flake to break off. Stalking an animal from downwind causes it not to notice you. Putting wood on a fire causes it to grow. A Neanderthal child would grasp this immediately. Tap the bright red icon with a white triangle. A video of a cartoon car starts playing. Tap it again. The video stops. This is simple, direct feedback. They would learn the basic functions of apps that provide an immediate sensory reward. Simple games, video players, a drawing app. Like, this part of using a smartphone is like a puzzle box, a Skinner box. The Neanderthal brain would be more than capable of figuring this out. They would likely be very good at it. But this is where things start to get tricky. Using a smartphone isn't just about cause and effect. It's about understanding symbols. And this is the great unknown, the great debate about the Neanderthal mind. What is a symbol? It's something that stands for something else. The word dog doesn't look like a dog or sound like a dog, but we all agree it represents that four-legged animal. The little envelope icon on your phone isn't a real envelope. It's a picture that represents the concept of messages, of mail. The gear icon represents the idea of settings or controls. A smartphone interface is almost entirely symbolic. Nothing on the screen is what it literally is. It's a map of abstract ideas. To use a phone effectively, you have to live in this symbolic world. You have to understand that one thing can represent another. Did Neanderthals think symbolically? The evidence is thin. And this is a huge contrast with our direct ancestors, Homo sapiens, who were living at the same time. Around 50,000 years ago, we see an explosion of symbolic behavior from Homo sapiens. They painted stunning images of animals on cave walls. They carved intricate figurines from bone and ivory. They created musical instruments. They buried their dead with elaborate grave goods like beads and tools, suggesting a belief in an afterlife or some kind of symbolic ritual. With Neanderthals, the evidence is much more debated. There are a few potential examples. Some sites show they used eagle talons as jewelry. Some have lumps of pigment that might have been used for body paint. They did bury their dead, but usually in simple graves without the rich collection of objects that Homo sapiens included. This doesn't mean they had no symbolic thought at all, but it seems it wasn't a central part of their world in the way it was for ours. Their intelligence was more grounded in the here and now, the concrete, physical world. And Homo sapiens, on the other hand, were beginning to live in a world of stories, myths, and shared fictions. Our minds were becoming dual-layered the real world and the world of ideas we projected onto it. So what would this mean for our Neanderthal child? They would grow up surrounded by symbols from birth. They would learn that the letters D, O, G mean the family pet. They would be taught that the green icon with a phone receiver means call grandma. Because they are immersed in it, they would probably learn it. But would they understand it on the same deep intuitive level that we do? Perhaps not. It might be more like learning a set of rules. Rule 1, press the green thing to talk to grandma. Rule 2, press the colorful camera to see pictures. They might learn the what, but not the why. The connection between the symbol and the abstract concept it represents could be weaker. They would be navigating a world of arbitrary rules, not a world of meaning. This leads us to the next, even more difficult layer nested in abstract concepts. A smartphone is not just a collection of symbols, it's a portal to systems that are almost entirely abstract. Think about what's happening when you use it. You tap an icon. A signal is sent to a processor. The processor executes a command that changes the pixels on a screen. If you go online, a signal is sent wirelessly through the air to a router. That router sends a signal to a series of cables, maybe even under the ocean. It reaches a server, a computer, and a giant warehouse hundreds of miles away. That server sends information back, and the whole process reverses. You and I don't understand the deep engineering of this, but we have a basic conceptual model of how it works. We have a concept of the internet, of Wi-Fi, of the cloud. We know the information isn't inside the phone, it's somewhere else. We are comfortable with these invisible systems that govern our lives. This level of abstraction would likely be a complete wall for a Neanderthal. Their minds were shaped by a world where everything was tangible. If you want to get food, you track and kill an animal. If you want to be warm, you build a fire. If you want to make a tool, you hit a rock. Everything is direct, physical, and has an immediate, observable consequence. How would you explain Wi-Fi to someone with a mind like that? How would you explain that your photos are not stored in the phone but in a cloud? These are concepts built on layers and layers of other concepts. They are like modern myths. They are stories we use to make sense of a technology we can't see. It seems very unlikely that a Neanderthal brain, organized for the concrete problems of Ice Age survival, would have the architecture to build these kinds of mental models. So, they might learn to open a web browser and type in a simple address they've memorized. But would they understand what browsing the web is? Probably not. It would be a magical picture box. You do a certain ritual and new pictures appear. The underlying system, the vast interconnected network of information, would be beyond comprehension. This brings us to language. We think Neanderthals could speak. Their hyoid bone, a bone in the throat that supports the tongue, was just like ours. They had the right versions of the FOXP2 gene, which is linked to language in humans. They could make the sounds. But what was their language like? Some linguists speculate that it might have been less complex than ours. It might have lacked something called recursion. Recursion is the ability to embed one idea inside another. For example, in English I can say, I saw the dog. I can also say, I saw the dog that chased the cat. I can go further, I saw the dog that chased the cat that ate the mouse. We can nest clauses and ideas inside each other endlessly. This is what allows us to tell complex stories, to discuss abstract ideas, and to plan for the distant future. If Neanderthal language lacked this recursive quality, it would have been more direct. See dog, dog chase cat, cat eat mouse. It would be a language of the here and now, very good for coordinating a hunt, but not so good for discussing philosophy or explaining how the internet works. Our Neanderthal child would learn whatever language they were taught, like English or Spanish, but the deep structure of their brain might struggle with the complex, nested sentences we use without thinking. And written language is another layer of symbolism on top of spoken language. Reading and writing might be a huge struggle. They might be able to learn a few words by sight, but the fluency needed to read a news article or write a long email would be a massive challenge. So where does that leave us? Let's try to build a realistic picture of what a Neanderthal using a smartphone would look like. They would be great at some things. They would probably love simple, visually stimulating games that give immediate rewards. Think Candy Crush or Fruit Ninja. The pattern recognition and quick reflexes needed for these might even be superior to ours. They would learn to use the phone as a tool for immediate needs. Flashlight? Easy. Calculator for simple math? Probably. Camera? Absolutely. They would understand that it captures an image of what they see. They might take thousands of pictures of things they find interesting. They could learn to make a video call. They would learn to press the picture of a person's face to talk to them. They'd see the person on the screen and hear their voice and understand that they are communicating. That's a direct social interaction, just mediated by technology, but the things that make a smartphone a portal to the modern world would likely be out of reach. They wouldn't be scrolling through Twitter trying to understand the nuances of a political debate. They wouldn't be managing their bank account with an app because the concept of digital money is pure abstraction. They wouldn't be setting up a shared calendar with their family because that requires complex future planning and a shared understanding of symbolic time. They would use the phone as a consumer, not a creator. They could watch YouTube, but they wouldn't be able to navigate the complex menus to upload and tag their own video. They could listen to music, but they wouldn't be using an app to compose a song. Their relationship with the phone would be fundamentally different from ours. For us, a smartphone is a tool, but it's also an extension of our own minds. It holds our memories, photos, our social networks, contacts, and social media, our plans for the future calendar, and our access to the collected knowledge of humanity, the internet. Our consciousness is deeply intertwined with this device. We live through it. For a Neanderthal, it would likely remain a magical object, a powerful and entertaining tool, but an external one. It would be a box of tricks. They would learn the incantations to make it work, but they wouldn't understand the magic. They wouldn't be able to internalize the abstract world it represents. The whole thought experiment reveals something profound about the last 50,000 years of human evolution. In the grand scheme of things, that's not a very long time, but in that period, the Homo sapiens mind seems to have crossed a crucial threshold. We didn't just get better at making tools or hunting. We started to build a shared reality out of symbols, stories, and abstract ideas. We started building institutions, religions, nations, and financial systems. These things don't exist in the physical world. They exist in our collective imagination. They are a product of our unique ability to think symbolically. The modern world is the ultimate expression of this ability. With a smartphone is a physical object, but its true power, its true essence, is completely non-physical. It's a gateway to that world of shared imagination. So yes, a Neanderthal, raised in the right environment, could probably learn to swipe and tap. They could watch videos and play simple games. They could use the phone in a basic, functional way. but they wouldn't be able to step through the looking glass. They wouldn't be able to join us in the abstract, symbolic world where we now spend so much of our lives. They would be holding a universe in their hands, but they would only ever be able to see its surface. And that's the difference that made all the difference.